Hey, Teddy K here for the Best Buy blog, and in this video review we look at the Fuji X-H2S. This is Fuji's top-of-the-line mirrorless camera that will fulfill your need for speed. The S in X-H2S refers to speed because speed very much is a factor in what this camera can do. And that's why I'm going to basically preface what I'm going to say in this review in that you need to be interested in shooting sports, wildlife, anything that has fast action, because that's really where this camera can shine relative to others in Fujifilm's lineup. I'll start right off the bat by saying that when it comes to still images, so image quality, when you're taking just regular still shots, I don't know that this camera shoots better than the X-T4. I remember the X-T4, it was excellent. Even the X-T3 takes very good shots, but compared to the X-T4, I don't know that this is that much better in terms of image quality. I felt like the two cameras really were very similar in how they shot. But this is a stacked CMOS sensor. Now by stacked means that you have better readouts, so you can shoot more shots in a shorter time. That's why Fuji has been playing up its 40 frames per second burst shooting mode. That is cool on paper, and it does work, but there are some caveats I'm going to point out here. First, the camera takes two different memory cards. So you can go with CFExpress or you can go with an SD card with UHS-2. So basically something, you just want speed in the card, right? Because you want it to read fast. When you're going to shoot in burst, especially at, I think at the highest speeds, so 40 frames per second, as again Fuji offers, you ideally want a CF card for that. It's same with if you're going to shoot video in ProRes. This camera can do that, and you probably want a CFExpress card for those things. Don't get me wrong though, now you can shoot in burst with an SD card as well, and you can do it well. However, I found that with some of the challenges that also apply here with focusing, sometimes the focusing is really good and too good to the point where it frustrated me, like the eye and face detection, for example. Even the subject detection, like I'm trying to take a photo of a wider scene and it just catches somebody's face who's like in the corner. It's impressive, but also a little bit frustrating. Unfortunately, though, when you're shooting in burst, it doesn't always stick to that subject, right? So if you're shooting a moving subject sometimes and you're shooting that fast, I mean 40 frames, you may find that certain frames are going to be out of focus. And so that's why I actually agree with some of the reviewers that are out there that are saying if you knock that down to 30 or 15, you are good to go. I should mention, of course, that 40 frames per second is when you're using the electronic shutter, not the mechanical one. The mechanical one maxes out at 15. You can, of course, adjust these things by going into the menu system, and I do recommend that if you're not familiar with all the features, generally speaking, in a Fuji camera, especially if you're upgrading to something like this, take a lot of time to learn the menu system, to learn the features, where they are, and how you can access them, because not everything's going to feel very straightforward, right? I mean, this is a different design to a certain degree for Fuji. Obviously, you have fewer dials, so now if you want to control shutter speed, ISO, things like that, you are going to use, you're just going to use these dials here as opposed to dials that are on top. I really like the LCD screen here that they have on the, above as well. Very useful for just knowing the settings as opposed to just peering through the viewfinder to see them. But again, there are certain things that work here that I like, and I think that you would like as well. The viewfinder is excellent. There's a lot of focal points. You can choose how and where you use those focal points. You can also have the camera choose them for you. So there's, you can go semi-auto to an extent, you can go manual. There's a lot of variance there in how you want to shoot. But it takes me back to my original point, which is that you can shoot stills, you can shoot products. I mean, whatever kind of photography you're into, even a wedding photographer, you'll be fine shooting with this. But I don't know, unless you're shooting for speed primarily, I don't know that you're getting a major benefit in going with this camera relative to the others, particularly for stills. I think for video, there's a different case to be made because this is probably the best Fuji has when it comes to video. There's a fair amount of customization here too that apply. I mean, 7 different presets on the dial alone, like just on the dial here alone. You don't see that every day, but you could do that. And then of course the menu system, there are shortcuts you can access with the Q button in the back. It's very, very easy to do that. The joystick is pretty, very responsive when you want to move that focal point around. I find also when you want to zoom into photos after you've shot them, it's very, very good to use the, the dial here just to check out and see, like, take a look at a close, image a little bit closer. So I'm fine with the controls, generally speaking. I think they're okay. I didn't feel like I was missing anything or necessarily losing anything. The battery life, I don't know. It's okay. I wouldn't say it's great. So Fuji rates at about 390 shots per charge. You actually will get more if you shoot in bursts because obviously you're firing shots off in a shorter time. But I don't know, 390 shots, I don't know that that's always accurate. I think that kind of depends on what you're shooting. If you're shooting exclusively in RAW, if you are shooting in certain conditions, I don't know, maybe the weather is a factor. I had a situation where I was on low battery with, I don't even think I hit 300 shots in that one charge. So I'm not sure what's going on, but either way, regardless, even if it was 500 shots, I would recommend getting a backup battery for this phone, for this camera. And at the same time, you might want to consider getting a battery pack. So the kind of thing that you would use with the phone to charge that, you can use it to also charge the camera too, using the USB-C port. Some of the connections I'll point out too. So HDMI, it's a full HDMI port, so that's always cool. And then you've got microphone, headphone, and the USB-C port for charging. So you have a lot there that you can use. And if you want to tether the camera to a laptop or another device, you can do that. There's also Fuji's app so that you can wirelessly send photos over as well. Fuji's film modes, the film simulation modes are in here. I'd also recommend trying those out if you get a chance. Now on JPEG, when you're shooting in JPEG, you have to choose which one of those simulation modes you want to try. Again, that's unless you, now if you know the cameras, you know Fuji's cameras, you already know what they do. But if you don't, I highly recommend just try them out, see what works and what doesn't. If you shoot in RAW, you have the option of actually applying one of those simulation modes onto the image after. I personally prefer to do that in post, like in Adobe Lightroom or Photoshop after. That's just my workflow. Yours might be different, but again, if you just kind of want to try something, you feel like you want to try something on the camera, you could do that as well. So I shot with two lenses with the X-H2S. So here I have a 16 to 55 millimeter and I had a 70 to 200 millimeter. I primarily use this one, and the camera body is a little heavy to begin with, and of course when you have a heavier lens, it's going to feel a little hefty as well. But for the most part, given Fuji's excellent lens lineup in the X mount, you have a lot of different options in what you can shoot with this. So of course, if you are graduating from a different X mount camera, you can just use the same lenses on this. Again, this is an APS-C sensor, so it is not a full frame, although it's priced like it is. And that's another thing to consider too. If you are mostly looking for still photography and video sort of an afterthought or something that you might dabble into, what I recommend is looking into either a different Fuji camera like the X-T4 or maybe even the X-H2, or even a full frame camera like the Sony A7 IV or Canon EOS R7, something like that. Something that is made more so, I think, for still photos as opposed to prioritizing video. This camera is more if you need speed. You have a need for speed, this is one way to go. It is fast. It is very fast. It maintains focus fairly well, especially if you lower that frame rate just a little bit, down to like 30 or less. You will have a better chance, I think, of honing in on that subject and staying there. But it's a good camera. I enjoyed shooting with it. I really like the articulating screen. I appreciated the types of shots I was able to get. I love the viewfinder, one of the best I've ever used. So there's a lot to like about the X-H2S, but it really should come with a disclaimer, kind of what I've been saying here, that it's all about speed. If you need the speed, this is the way to go. If you really don't, you got other options. And that's my review of the Fujifilm X-H2S for the Best Buy blog. I'm Teddy K. Thanks for watching.